Hi, welcome to a celebration of Nantucket Sound. I'm Audra Parker, your host and the president and CEO of the Alliance to Protect Nantucket Sound. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with our organization, we're a nonprofit environmental group based in Hyannis on Cape Cod, and our mission is the permanent protection and preservation of Nantucket Sound, the body of water that lies between Cape Cod and the islands of Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. And this protection is especially important because Nantucket Sound is a very unique geography. As you can see on this map, you have state waters that extend 3 miles from the shore of Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard, and Nantucket, and those are protected under a state law called the Massachusetts Ocean Sanctuaries Act. But the whole center of Nantucket Sound is federal waters under federal jurisdiction and remain unprotected. So in order to achieve permanent protection for the Sound, the Alliance, along with a diverse group of stakeholders, have been pursuing 2 tracks to designate Nantucket Sound as a National Historic Landmark. And a National Historic Landmark is the highest level of protection possible. And one example would be the entire island of Nantucket is a National Historic Landmark. So we're seeking both federal legislation as well as administrative designation through the U.S. Department of the Interior to designate Nantucket Sound as a landmark and to improve protection. The legislation would also provide important environmental benefits to address things like diminished water quality, habitat degradation, and other environmental threats, while protecting traditional existing uses like fishing and recreation. So as I mentioned before, this designation is supported by a strong and diverse group of stakeholders that include towns across the Cape and Islands, historic preservation groups, chambers of commerce, and many, many others. So just to introduce our main act, this is Nat Benjamin will be joining us tonight to discuss boat building and design. And a few words about Nat. He's a master boat builder, and he is the co-founder of Gannon and Benjamin Marine Railway in Vineyard Haven. He's been sailing since his youth, doing his first offshore delivery to St. Thomas in 1967. And since then, Nat has delivered yachts and skippered charter boats across the Atlantic, through the Mediterranean, and to and from the Caribbean. In 1980, Nat, along with Ross Gannon, founded the Gannon and Benjamin Marine Railway, a boatyard that specializes in the design, construction, repair, and maintenance of wooden boats. Gannon Benjamin has built over 70 boats, ranging in size from 8-foot yacht tenders to the 65-foot schooner named Juno. And at the beginning of 2023, construction began on the 26-foot gaff sloop Marta, which is Nat's 100th design, which was just launched this past weekend. So congratulations on that, and welcome, Nat. We'll wait a second, he'll turn his video on. Perfect. So just one point of housekeeping, your video capacity is off. You'll just see me and Nat. I'm gonna turn mine off, and then I'll join Nat back at the end of his presentation, and we will take questions from the audience, but feel free to write them in, throughout the presentation. I'll get back to them at the end. So again, thanks for joining us. And let's see if Nat is there someplace. There he is.
Here I am.
I see you.
Can you hear me?
I can see you and I can hear you. So
good.
Thank you so much. We just read about the good news about the launch of your 100th design and saw some great photos. So congratulations on that. Very exciting.
Yeah, that was a great day. And we had a good turnout, and we just got the rig in the boat yesterday and bent the sails on today. And hopefully tomorrow we'll take her out for her maiden voyage.
Well, sounds wonderful, and good luck. So I'm going to turn my video off. Thank you for joining us, Nat. I very much look forward to your presentation, and I'll join back when you're done, and we'll take some questions.
Thank you, Audra, for the nice introduction, and look forward to talking later.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now let's see if I can bring up this PowerPoint. I'm trying to open up a PowerPoint presentation. which is loading up. And I've got to hit share screen, I believe. Let's see here. Okay. I see it, but I'm not sure you do. So
I don't see it yet.
okay, so I'm trying to find share screen. Let's see, maybe it's over here. Slideshow.
There we go.
Is that it?
That is it. I see it. You could probably put it in larger to take up the whole screen, but it works like that as well.
Okay. Do you see that the big format? Okay. I think Peter's actually gonna
Yep. Oh, you're
control
back.
this.
Oh, he's gonna do it
now.
We don't see you're back on. Oh, here you go again. Okay, there we go. Now we're seeing the slides.
Okay. And you still see me?
I do.
No, you don't need to see me.
I can see you and the slides.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Okay, now I see the slides in large across the screen and a small inside of view. So
Okay.
that works perfectly. Okay, thank you. I'll get off now.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody, and a big shout out to the Alliance to Protect Nantucket Sound. We're huge supporters of that, and of course, living on Vineyard Sound, there's no border here, so we reap collateral benefits from everything you do over there, and we hope we can do our part on Vineyard Sound and make this a better body of water for the future. I'm going to talk this evening about a boat we built. I'm going to talk about traditional wooden boat building and about a boat we built in 2001, launched in 2003, a schooner called Juno. But I just want to say ahead of time, when I was 9 years old, I went to sailing camp on Pleasant Bay. I went to Pleasant Bay Camp, and I have vivid and very fond memories of 2 summers there, where we sailed these beautiful little Baybird sloops, gaff rig centerboard sloops, sailed them on Pleasant Bay, and it was a profound experience and something I remember to this day. Okay, I'm just looking at my phone here. Yep. So I'm going to advance to the next slide. These are just sort of random pictures around our boatyard. These are several boats being built at once in the waterfront shed. And so what we do at Gannon Benjamin, we do traditional wooden boat building, which is plank on frame, no fiberglass. We do use some glue for building masts and things, but it's very traditional, old school, a lot of hand tools. We source the lumber from environmentally sound sources. For example, we get some of our big timbers from Suriname in South America, and they have very good logging practices. One of the few countries in South America that really manages their forests well. In fact, far better than we do in the United States for the most part. And we also source lumber from New England mills and mills in Florida and Georgia and some on the West Coast. So we use all different kinds of woods, from the tropical hardwoods like Angelique and Silver Bali and Purple Heart and Red Locust to local New England timbers, the wonderful and incomparable white oak, which is certainly one of the finest boat building woods ever. And then from the south, we get wood called live oak, which is a different animal, although it's part of the oak family, but very different look and different. It's a very dense, heavy, interlocking grain timber. So Peter, I'm going to go ahead and control the slides. I can do this. So this is the waterfront shop. We've got a canoe stern sloop being built on the right-hand side there, and a couple of Bellas. Those are our 21-foot day sailors. We've built 7 of those over the years. Great little open boats with a couple of little bunks, but mostly day sailing and no engine. So now we're going over to what we call the mugwump shop, where we built the schooner Juno. I designed Juno for a summer visitor here, a wonderful guy, wonderful family, great philanthropist, and someone who's very concerned with the environment and a great supporter of good causes on the Vineyard as well. Lofting is when you take the drawings and draw them full size on the floor. And there's something very arcane and mystical about this process, but as you see here, it's just done with a man and a dog, and it's really not very complicated at all. But we like to keep the mystique about it. So here we are drawing out full size on the floor, a 65-foot schooner. The next step is making patterns of all the stations for the frames. And then this boat was built with double sawn frames, both Angelique and Black Locust, and they were trunneled together. On the top right screen, you can see the trunnels, which are wooden tree nails that pin the 2 sections of what are called futtocks together to make one solid frame. We use the locust trunnels. They're slightly tapered. They're driven in and then cut flush and then wedged, so they can't move. And it's a great way to do it, because then when you're screwing planking on later on, you can run screws through them, and you're not, if they were bolts, you'd be running into bronze bolts. So here's more framing. There's Chris Mullins on the right there, nipping off the trunnels, and Pat Cassidy laying a pattern on the left-hand frame there, laying a pattern on a piece of naturally grown Angelique. So you try and match the curve of the wood to the shape of the boat for the maximum strength. Now we maneuver a lot of these timbers around. These are big Angelique timbers that were shipped up from Suriname. They were actually shipped up on a cargo schooner, a steel cargo schooner named the Aventur, by a very, very mad Dutchman. But boy, he was a great guy, and he got us these fabulous timbers. And then to get them out of the hold of his ship and onto a trailer and then over to the shop. And here we are maneuvering them from the back of the shop into indoors on planks and rollers. Egyptian technology, but it works very well if you don't have a lot of fancy, expensive machinery. Now these 2 frames show the lead ballast keel. So the boat displaced or weighs about 95,000 pounds, and 30,000 pounds of that weight is in the lead ballast keel. And what you see here in both the top and bottom frames are the lead keel. And that was cast, we made a wooden plug of the shape of it, and then we sent the plug down to the foundry in Providence, which regretfully is no longer in business. And now we have to go to Ontario or Mexico to get lead keels cast. But anyway, this was very nice to have it in Providence. And okay, sorry, I've got Peter's asking me, we're on slide 9. I'm not sure. Yes, slide 9. This is slide 9. I hope this is coming up. Are you seeing this?
Yes.
Okay, yep. Good. Anyway, so here's a 30,000 pound piece of lead, which again is not easy to maneuver around. And we had it brought in on a boat trailer and then flopped on its side, so we can, the holes were pre-drilled or pre-cast in the lead casting. So those are those black circles, those are the countersinks for the bolts. And then we placed the wooden keel, the big Angelique timber next to it, and then drill the holes going horizontally, which is much easier than trying to drill up and down. And here we are again. Here's the keel timber on its side with the ballast keel, and starting to install floor timbers. The floor timbers on the left-hand screen there, you see my New Zealand friend in blue overalls with a ruler sticking out of his pocket. He's drilling a 3/4 inch hole through a big Angelique timber and right through the wooden keel timber. And it's all bolted together. Now this is part of the backbone structure. Of course, everything's got to be fit quite nicely, and you have a big keel timber. And here you see it now. The keel timber is right side up with a wooden keel on top on the right-hand screen. And on the left, that's the aft end of the keel timber with the stern post timbers stood up on it. And so this is all backbone getting ready for the ends. And now on the left-hand frame, this is a great shipwright guy named Andy Lyons, and he's chopping mortises in the horn timber. The horn timber is the piece of wood that lands on top of the stern post, which is on the right-hand side, and you can see the tenon sticking out of it that horn timber will sit on top of. So that's the stern of the boat, and then at the end of the horn timber, you have the transom or the stern. And looking all the way out on the right-hand side there, you can see the stem braced up on the forekeel, almost to the door. So here we have the backbone taking shape, just like a giant dinosaur in a museum. But these shipwrights were great. This fella, Andy Lyons, on the left, after we built Juno, he said, you know, I like this work a lot, but I'm going to start building violins. That the heavy lifting isn't quite so strenuous. So he does both now. He still builds boats, but in his spare time, he builds beautiful violins. Now, the nice thing about lofting a boat is you've got all your plans drawn full size, so you can start making patterns of anything, from the mast to the finished joiner work. And so in the left-hand frame here, we have Cass and Kennedy cutting out the dovetails for the teak cabin sides, even though we're not even, framed up yet. But you can have different people doing different jobs, and then you assemble all these pieces of the puzzle and eventually put them together. There on the right, you can see the frames being put on top of the keel timber. The ballast keel being that great big 30,000-pound gray metal lead beneath the wooden keel. More framing. Framing is really fun. It's you build all these frames on the bench, and then you sort of strap them together with 2x4s and things called crossballs just to hold the shape. And then you start standing them up on the keel. And very quickly, this shape of the boat begins to evolve. It's quite exciting. And every day you have these sensual shapes just standing up and filling up this shop. And this boat, the shop was 70 feet long and boat 65 feet. So it pretty much filled up the shop. So on the left, you see there's a ballast keel with a keel on top and a bunch of frames all fastened in place to the floor timbers. And on the right-hand side, we've got more frames going in, and that's the stem, that curved piece of wood there is the stem with what's called a rabbet cut in it, and the rabbet is the notch where the planks will land. So that's, I really should offer, if anyone wants to jump in with a question, that's fine with me. If this gets too confusing, I'm happy to answer questions on the way, but I'll let Audra deal with that. Another detail of the framing, and a number of the floor timbers, and those are the timbers that go across the keel and fasten the frames, sort of keep fastening the sides of the boat to the bottom. And a number of the floor timbers, yep, Peter, that's right. We're on slide number 16 now. A number of these floor timbers are bronze. That way they don't fill up too much of the interior space of the boat, because you can build them stronger than wood. So the the water tanks and so forth can be put low down in the bottom of the boat. Okay, slide number 17, and this is where things really start getting fun. It's one of the most beautiful things to look at. A vessel, a traditional wooden boat vessel in frame. It's a skeleton. It's a sentient being becoming, coming to life. It's really quite extraordinary. And when we get to this stage, nobody leaves the shop after work. We climb inside and sit around and have a cold drink or something and just look at this, what have we done? Or what are we doing? Anyway, it's very exciting. Now we're on slide number 18. And the left-hand frame shows the transom, which has been bolted to the horn timber, which is what that guy with a white t-shirt, that's Casson Kennedy there, he's fastening the floor timber down to the horn timber. And then the transom is fastened to a big knee, which is at the end of that horn timber. So the transom is, and that's the wooden structure you see to the left there, that's curved and raking, which is a challenge for the lofting to take this from a two-dimensional drawing, loft it out full size, and then create it in 3 dimensions. Anyone with any mechanical or building knowledge can see that you've got lots of different shapes going on here, and you have to strike arcs of the curve of the transom to get the right lengths for where the water lines and the buttock lines land and so forth. So anyway, that's probably the hardest part of the lofting, is the curved raking transom. But we got this one pretty well. And then on the right here, we've got, although we do use some modern machinery here, we've got Chris Mullins with an adze dubbing off, fairing some of the dead wood so the planks will lay fair from the frames into against that. That's a big knee he's chopping away at there. The process of fairing in wooden boat building never ends. You're constantly holding up long wooden battens against the frames and seeing how they run into the rabbet, which is where the planks end, where the planks lie is a nice fair line and no hard spots, no bumps. So we're constantly fairing with an adze, with planes, chisels, hatchets, whatever it takes, fairing the frames and the keel timber. And it's really, if you have enough people, it's very enjoyable because it goes pretty quickly, and it's very satisfying work to have a really sharp adze and be able to chip away at these timbers. Slide number 19. Here we are on the bottom left here, all looking at looking at a batten to see how fair it's laying. What we're doing here is lining off the planking. So we're putting temporary battens up, clamping them in place to represent how certain planks will lay onto this boat. And that's the next job. Once we're all framed up, then we got to put a skin on it. And this boat was planked with wood called Juno, which comes from South America. She's double planked, so it's very strong and durable, and the double planking does not need to be caulked, so it's all tight fit, so it makes for a very smooth and beautiful hull. This vessel, Juno, she's in the harbor right now. She just came back from a winter in the Caribbean. She looks actually better than the day she was launched, because as boats age, if they're cared for properly, they develop their own patina and their character, and lots of fine touches are added, and so they really do age gracefully and get better with time. On the right-hand side, we're fitting what are called the chain plates, and these are bronze plates, which will have bronze, and those are bronze lugs riveted to them, and they will hold the rigging from the mast to keep the masts standing up. So that's quite a bit of metal work. We work with bronze a lot. It's a nice metal to work with. We can weld it, we can braze it, we can bend it, saw it, and it's very long lasting. It doesn't corrode. So we use a lot of silicon bronze. Slide number 20. Okay, there we are on the left. You can see that sensual framing job there with the skeletal look of the vessel. And then on the right, we've got the first plank going on, which is the bottom plank called the garboard plank. And this is a great big long plank, about 30 feet long, with and it's almost 2 inches thick. The young man there in the white shirt, Ashley Butler, he came to work for us when he was, I think, 19. He had just sailed across the Atlantic on an old 1902 English crabber, a boat that he rebuilt with his father in England. And he had sailed it across alone and came to Martha's Vineyard, and a young man with a lot of skills and a lot of energy. And he would work on Juno by day, and then in the evenings, he had a little boat set up in another shop, which he built eventually and sailed back to England. But you meet some really extraordinary people. And Ashley now has a very successful boatyard in England and builds traditional wooden boats, which are very highly respected and well crafted. Slide number 21. Okay, now while this whole planking situation is interesting. You start from the bottom. The previous slide we saw us putting on the garboard plank. And then at the same time, you have another team up top, starting with a shear plank, the shear strake, which is the top plank which defines the edge of the deck. And that's what you see on the right-hand frame here. So we get two crews, one working from the top down, the other from the bottom up, and we meet someplace near the middle for what's called the shutter plank, the last plank to put in. But on the left-hand frame here, we can see the bronze chain plates poking up, the bronze that are going to hold the rigging, and then the diagonal strapping that goes from that big bronze plate all the way down along the frames and into the bilge. So now the left-hand frame on slide 22, we see the double planking moving along. So that's 2 layers of planking fastened together with a sort of a unpleasant goo between the layers that keeps the water out and sort of seals everything up. And then on the right-hand side, we have the bilge stringers. Those are those long, long stringers that lay on the inside of the frames, inside the boat. And then the two big blocks of wood on the center line, those are the mast steps. That's where the main and the foremast will sit. They will come down through the deck and key into those great big timbers. As we're moving along, we now install the engine, which is, that's about 180 horse Yanmar. It's still in the boat, running beautifully, well maintained. We were very fortunate when we got the commission to build this boat. The owner said, "Well, we'll do this, but we need you to get us a captain, someone that'll skipper the boat and take care of it and so forth." And we've got the best. Our friend Scotty DiBieso, who had kind of grown up with our kids, and he's a terrific sailor and a skier. And now he's got a wonderful growing family of his own, one of them in college, one of his boys in college, and the other one about to graduate from high school. But Scotty's still aboard 20 years later, and the boat is beautifully cared for, and he's got a great first mate with him, Bear, who really keeps things in order. So here on the right-hand side, that's looking toward the stern of the boat, toward the inside of the transom, and you can see the clamp and the shelf timbers. Those are the timbers that connect the side of the boat, and the deck beams bolt through those. And let's look at, here we go, slide 24. These are patterns. These are patterns made out of wood. Just pine or anything that's kicking around will work, as long as it's dry and fairly stable. So the ones there that are painted gray those are going to be turned into bronze. Those are the wooden patterns which we send to a foundry, and the foundry puts them in a mold and then pours in molten bronze and sends them back, and we install them. Those are the hinges to turn the rudder. And then the other pattern there is for the Kranz iron, which goes at the end of the bowsprit, where the head stay and the bobstay and the whisker shrouds attach. And they're sitting on the rudder. That's the rudder there being roughed out. Number 25. Now we're moving along. We've got the planking coming along, sheer strakes and a couple down, and the bottom's moving up. And while that's happening, we've got the deck beams going in. And you can see here we have the big cutout in the middle. That's going to be for the aft cabin or the doghouse. And the next rectangular pocket back looking aft is the cockpit, and then a lazarette hatch after that. Slide 26. Here we're caulking the bottom single planking, because it's not all double planked. The first about 4 or 5 planks are single planked, and then it rabbits into then it takes a notch, and then the double planking begins. So you can see the lighter planking higher up is all double planked, which needs no caulking, but these lower planks are single, and they're being caulked by the notorious Frank Raposa, who's helped caulk the Charles W. Morgan when they restored her. He worked on the Amistad. He's worked on Spirit of Massachusetts, and many traditional boats. He's also a great artist. He does beautiful work with shell work, and as well as etching and painting and drawing. He's immensely talented. There he is. So the caulking now is not some kind of goo. Caulking is cotton, and those are the balls of cotton in a box there. and we use both cotton and oakum. So the cotton gets driven in first, and then the oakum on top of it. Oakum is basically tarred hemp, whereas the cotton is just cotton fiber. And these fibers are driven in to the seams between the planks, because when you plank up a boat with traditional carvel planking, the planking is tight on the inside, but there's a bevel on it. So outside it's slightly open, so you can drive this cotton in with a big mallet. You can see him there hitting that caulking iron with a mallet. And there's quite a technique to to feed it into the seam and drive it just the right amount of force, so it's in the center of the seam and not too hard and not too soft. And then the cotton and the oakum is painted with a red lead paint and then puttied over. Well, here we are moving along now. We've got deck beams in, and we're putting down the covering boards, which are the first deck planking pieces that go along the edge of the hull, the outer edge of the hull along the shear. And on the right-hand frame, you can see the hole in the middle of the deck there. That's going to be for the mainmast. And then the X bracing, those are bronze straps which are let in flush with the deck beams to give extra lateral support and strength to the deck. So we not only put bronze strapping in the hull, but also on the deck. Down below, before the deck goes on completely, it's important to try and do as much as you can. This is slide 29, by the way. You want to do as much as you can of the interior. So when you're putting in a bulkhead, you don't have to try and fit the bottom and the top. You just let them run through the deck beams because there's no deck on, and then you saw them off afterwards. Now these beautiful curved timbers you see are called hanging knees, and they are the root of the larch tree, also called hackmatack. So it's a natural curve that wraps around that corner, which secures the side of the boat to the deck itself. And they're very important. They're very structural, and having a good, strong corner of a boat is absolutely essential. These were harvested in Maine. Sadly, the lumberjack who did this work did it all on his own, single-handed, and one day he didn't come back from the forest, and they found him dead beside a tree that took the wrong turn. But he was a wonderful guy and provided us with lots of beautiful knees. So now we're building the interior. And this is, so we bring tools right down below. Once we get the cabin sole down, then we've got bulkheads going on. Bulkheads are the walls, and we use lots of silver bali for this, which is a beautiful wood from South America. It is, again, it's beautifully managed forests and selectively cut lumber. They don't allow anything to be shipped out of Suriname unless it's milled first. So you don't have the huge international lumber companies coming in, just buying the logs and towing them out on barges. All the lumber is milled on site, which provides tremendous labor for the Surinamese, and it gives the forest value. So whereas in places like Brazil, where they just have sort of a free-for-all, take what you want, the forest has no value for the local people. So they burn it and cut it down and plant soybeans or something that's not sustainable. So we like doing business in Suriname. And this silver bali is just exquisite wood. Okay, slide number 31. Here we have the deck houses going on the deck. On the left-hand side, that after one is called either the navigation, the after deck house or the dog house. And then you have the midship deck house with the round portholes. And they get bolted down through what are called grubs, which are pieces of wood that are sitting on top of the deck and coved out, so that makes a smooth transition into the decking. And as you can see here on the right-hand side, the ends of the dovetails that guy back in probably 8 months or 10 months earlier was sawing out in the shop when we were framing. All right, slide number 32. There's the hull, faired up and smooth with what's called a red lead primer, which is a lead-based paint that we put on as a wonderful preservative for the wood. And over that will go the bottom paint, which is a copper-based paint. These days, we're using pretty benign paints. We use a water-based bottom paint that's not nearly as toxic, but it does a pretty good job in keeping off the barnacles. And as we advance, at least we hope we're advancing, the research and development in water-based paints and non-copper-based paints is really coming along, and hopefully we'll see a lot better and more environmentally acceptable products in the near future. Slide number 33, laying the deck. Now this is really fun work. You're out of the bilge and you're up on deck. I like to wear knee pads, but these guys are younger. So that's Nate Smith on the left, fitting a decking strake. And this deck is teak. And again, on the bottoms are tight and the tops are bevels to receive caulking. The young man on the right-hand frame there is a guy named Miles Thurlow. I think he was 19 when we built Juno 20 years ago. One of our best shipwrights on the project. And he's cutting a nib in the king plank, which is a notch for the decking to lock into. So it makes like a herringbone look, and it's very strong and structural as well. It's not just for looks. But Miles Thurlow now has his own shop, his own rigging shop. He's known all over the world for his spar building, and he's also just a terrific boat builder. And he's got a great family, and he's just a really good person. So we're proud when people like that. Miles, he first came to our shop when he was about 12 years old. He didn't like school very much, and he was at the charter school, and they gave him some latitude and said, well, okay, you go down to the boatyard after lunch. And so he started showing up at age 11 or 12, and I told his mother by the time he was 14, he was pretty much ruined for life. And he was. So now he's one of the most highly respected boat builders in the country. So occasionally these youngsters catch fire and they really turn into just amazing craftsmen. So that's on the bottom right, you see that's the stern of the boat, the top of the transom, and that's the covering board, and then the decking you can see being nibbed into the king plank there. Slide number 35. I always like to look at these pictures and wonder how that collection of individuals could create such an incredibly beautiful thing. But these guys are something else, and they sure did. On the right-hand frame there, we've got Cass and Kennedy smoothing up a big timber, which will go alongside the inside of the bulwarks. And that notch in the near end of it there is where the bowsprit will poke through. Okay, here we are in the summer, same gang. Everybody looking pretty happy. But yeah, this was the core group that built the whole boat. We've got a few others. Miles is not in this picture. And then toward the end, we brought in some extra help for painting and varnishing, but this was pretty much it. And I was in there too quite a bit every day. Here we are putting as Ginny Jones likes to call it, the deck furniture. That top frame, that's the forecastle scuttle or the forecastle hatch going down into sitting on the foredeck. And then, of course, you see on the bottom there, the cockpit with a wheel and the compass. And it's all of a sudden, it's starting to look like a real vessel. Down below, we've got more interior work going on. There on the left-hand frame is a beautiful hanging knee with a shelf notched around it. And then that's a sink in one of the heads. The boat has 3 heads or bathrooms, and that's the sink on one of them. Slide number 39 shows our apprentice program. We like to get them started early. And this is Ross Gannon, my partner Ross Gannon's son, Olin. I think he was 2, putting bungs in the stem of a little boat being built. But he's actually a very creative guy now. He's in his 20s, and he's a very, very accomplished ceramicist, and he makes beautiful ceramic bowls and pots, and as well as a lot of creative artistic work. And he's also a good boat builder, and he can do pretty much anything like his father. Now we're getting into the finishing stages. There we got the name on the stern with the hailing port, and there's that curved raking transom with a beautiful, highly painted stern, and the cockpit you see again, varnished combings, winches going on. Now you see the decking is complete, the deck houses, skylights, all the jewelry, all the fun stuff. Those bronze vents, those big cowl vents we had cast at the same foundry that did the other work. And our friend Bill McConnell made the patterns. Very capable people. It's really fun to work with these guys and then put all these pieces of the puzzle together. Slide number 42, we're getting ready to move the vessel out, and it was a tight fit. That was my dog barking. Come on, Touch. She likes to sit under my feet when I'm doing this, so I'm putting her there. Anyway, you can see the vessel painted up, just about ready for the launching. Slide number 43. To get this boat out of the shop was quite amazing. When she was all built, the boomkin, which are those V-shaped spars sticking out beyond the transom towards us, looking at the picture, they were out the back window, and the bowsprit was out the door, because the overall length of the boat is longer than the shop. And then we got Tom Brownell, the master of boat movers. He came over with his hydraulic trailer and maneuvered it underneath the boat, lifted it up, and then drove away. And there was about 1/4 of an inch to spare on either side. It looked like it's going to hit, but it actually didn't. It made it out the doorway. And then he drove it down the road. It was a slight drizzle that day. We had to have people on deck with sticks holding up the wires that went across the highway as we stopped traffic for quite a long time. And then he backed this thing there. There she goes out of the shop. And onto the street. There she is. There's on the left-hand side, that's Julian, the owner's son. He's now a grown man and a very successful entrepreneur on the West Coast. But there he is, poking his head through the propeller aperture. You can see the max prop propeller there. And you can see the rudder, the rudder straps. They were cast in bronze from those patterns that you looked at earlier. And here we go, going down the road, poking the wires up out of the way so we can get under them. And we took the boat down, Brownell's trailer took it down to Ralph Packard's Railway, where we had a big launching party. Here we are, slide 46. The welcoming committee is out, out in the harbor. Had a couple of distinguished vessels out there. There was, let's see, we've got the schooner Ishmael, we've got the gaff rig cutter Vela, Malabar 2, we got a tugboat. Rebecca is out there, the schooner we built just the year before this one. And about 1,000 people showed up, but we had a great party. And there she goes. Slide 47, we have the spectator fleet, and that's the boat on the right-hand side. That's Rebecca. That's a boat we built just before Juno. She was launched in 2001. She's a 60-foot schooner of my design. She was built for a Scottish couple who took her to the Caribbean, then took her to the Mediterranean, where she spent about 15 years. She was in England, and then she came back to America and was sailed here by Jesse Smith for a number of years. And now she's owned by Mystic Seaport. She's part of their collection, and she does charters, and she's maintained beautifully. She comes to the Vineyard and she goes to Maine, and it looks like she may be going down to the Caribbean next winter for doing some charter work. So if anyone wants to have fun in the sun next winter, or this summer for that matter, contact Mystic Seaport. Slide 48, there I am, and I'm relaxing with the owner. There's you see one of those bronze dorade vents there on the bottom right, that big bronze cowl vent. And the Vineyard Haven waterfront, which is quite an exceptional piece of property. It's full of traditional boats. We welcome you all to come anytime and see it and visit and come sailing and see our shop. Slide 49, this is on the bottom left there. That's one guy who needs to be mentioned, Brad Ives. He was our technical and mechanical guy, did all the plumbing and wiring and electric and engine installation. And he also had the connection to Suriname for the lumber. But there he is on phone, and you can see the beautiful silver Bali glowing varnish down below the galley and so forth. Slide 50, there's some more interior shots. On the right is the main saloon with settees, and on the left is main saloon, port side. See the skylight overhead. And she's turned out to be a really comfortable cruising boat, and she covers a lot of miles. She goes to to the Caribbean pretty much every winter. One year she went to Europe, went well into the Med as far as Dubrovnik, and then I flew over with the owner and some of his friends, and we met the boat in Cannes and sailed in the Val de Saint-Tropez, and that was very exciting, being in the Med with all those boats. But she gets around. Slide 51, more interior shots. She's really a spacious, comfortable boat. Slide 52, here we are. launched, sitting at the on the mooring with no rig. And on the right there, we've got the spars. The spars were built by a guy named Jim Elk in Maine. Excuse me, very capable builder. They're hollow Sitka spruce masts. And the rigging was done by Miles Thurlow and Billy Mabey, all the wire splicing and leather work and bronze hardware, bronze fabrications. So we're getting ready to rig this boat. And there, excuse me, there she is in Vineyard Haven Harbor, slide 53, with her sister, or cousin, I should say, Rebecca, her smaller cousin, on the mooring, and Juno at the dock there with her masts freshly stepped, waiting for her. I guess she's got her sails on, ready for sea trials. And that's our little boatyard there in the back, the dark building with a little dock and the gin pole. And slide 54, here we go. One of the maiden voyages. We've got the owner, excuse me, the owner at the helm. That's me out in the bowsprit, checking the bow wave. One of Ben Mendlowitz's stunning photographs. But yeah, building a wooden boat is quite a process, and it's one of those things that is become a bit of a vanishing landscape, but we're trying to keep it going, and we've got a lot of young people that are maintaining the skills and carrying on these traditions, which are quite wonderful. And she goes again. And there she is, Juno in the foreground with Rebecca just to leeward of her. The Ben Mendlowitz stunning photograph. But that's what we do. And again, keeping up the apprenticeship program, we keep the youngsters involved. And this is kind of an interesting shot with Juno out there in the mooring, the schooner Alabama, the schooner Shenandoah, and on the right-hand side of the frame, that's the schooner When and If. It was built for General Patton in 1939, and she was wrecked in a storm, in the perfect storm in 1991. We rebuilt her in the early 90s, and now she's still going strong. Great vessel. I think that's all of our slides. And Audra, if there's anything else.
I'm coming back. That was great. Really amazing pictures and an amazing process. Really beautiful. So thank you. I have a couple of questions from the audience, if I can ask them. Edward asks, how do you craft the lead keel?
Good question. What we do, it comes right off the drawing. And then, as I said, the drawing is lofted, which means drawn full size on the floor. So we have the lead drawn on the floor, the shape of the lead keel. Then we make a wooden plug of that lead. So we make the exact picture of what the lead will look like, but we build it out of wood. And we send that wooden plug or pattern to the foundry, the lead foundry, and they put that pattern in a sand casting. They build a sand casting around it, and then they pour in the molten lead, and then they send it back. Yeah.
Thank you. Catherine asks, has Juno spent time in Pleasant Bay or less?
Juno has not.
Okay.
She's a little long-legged for Pleasant Bay, but she certainly goes to Nantucket and races in the Opera House regularly, as has Rebecca and a lot of our boats. But Juno is, she spends the summers in, mostly, except for the 1 year in the Mediterranean, she spends her summers in southern New England, and then goes to Maine for a while, races in the Eggemoggin Reach Race, then comes back, does the Opera House and the Gaff Rig Race in Vineyard Haven that we have in September. So, and then she heads south pretty much she's sort of migratory. She goes to the Caribbean pretty much every winter.
Yep, as you said before, she gets around.
She does.
Okay, Elizabeth is wondering, how long did it take to build Juno?
Juno was built from lofting, lofting to launching in 20 months, 20 months. And by the time we had her rigged and sea trials, it was in about 22 months. And she left for, she left that after getting her launched, rigged, sea trials, and she left for the Caribbean in mid-December and arrived on Christmas Eve.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a very, very great and reasonably efficient building time for just a handful of guys and girls. And
Yeah, that's incredible.
yeah.
Okay, Dan is asking, was there ever anything that caused you to wake up at night with worries?
Well, there were, but they were usually about my children and grandchildren.
I was going to say, yeah. That makes
Well, I
more
didn't have
sense.
grandchildren then. It wasn't, let's say, it wasn't our first boat, so we had been through this, and we were all confident, and I was pretty confident, very confident in the design. We had built a 60-footer just a couple of years before, which was very successful, and you worry about, will the engine get delivered on time and that kind of thing, but no,
But nothing major.
nothing major. It really went remarkably smoothly.
Great. Mark is asking, how are the wooden planks bent to fit the shape of the hull?
Well, some of them are steam bent, where there's a lot of twist, like in the garboard planks, where they take a lot of bend and twist. Then you have to steam them in a steam box, get them very hot, and when they're hot, they're malleable, and you pull them out of the steam box and then very quickly clamp them in place. But on a big boat like this, most of the planking can just be clamped in place, just pushed in with clamps.
Okay. Guy asks, what is the future of wooden boat building as far as you can see?
Well, it's a great question. We certainly feel good about our little corner of the world. We have, we have secured a long-term sort of ownership lease for our place, our boatyard. So we see that continuing, and we've got young people interested in keeping it going. In general, it's really a tough call. We think that there will always be people that want a traditionally built wooden boat, just because not only is the finished product so wonderful and very long lasting, but the process of doing it is so extraordinary. These old skills, and a lot of owners just come by and watch and see what's going on. And it is this kind of work is sort of a vanishing landscape, but not completely. You've got some great ones over on Cape Cod. First Light is building great wooden boats, and it's the old Pease boatyard. Aries Pond does some nice wooden boat building. So there's some couple of yards in Maine that are maintaining the traditions, and
Yeah, the craftsmanship looked amazing. I mean, the craftsmanship that you showed was just amazing. So I'm sure there's always going to be a market for that.
I think so. There's nothing complicated about it, but
It's
it does
classic.
require a little bit of practice.
Dan asks, are your bills from suppliers and labor ever out of line with owner expectations?
Well,
Ever?
I must say, I'm sure they are sometimes. Rarely are they lower than the expectations, but this doesn't really happen very often. And usually the explanation is not very complicated as to why something is more than what they anticipated. And it's usually because they asked for more things to be done.
Exactly. Changing your mind and adding things.
So we have a really good reputation for coming up with a price and sticking to it. And so, yeah.
Tom says, thanks for a wonderful show. You answered many of my questions, but I'm mystified about the sequence of the strakes from top down and bottom up at the same time. I would have thought building only from the bottom up would have made it easier to get a tight hull. Filling in that last middle strake tightly must be quite a trick.
Well, I'm glad there's still some mysticism here. We want to keep you all mystified.
Well, you don't have to answer if you don't want to keep your
No,
secrets.
I'll answer it. You work from the bottom up and the top down, mainly to keep everybody busy. If you've got 6 guys on the job, they're not all going to be working on the bottom planking, or 8 guys. So you work from and it really is more efficient to go from the bottom up and the top down. And what you're also doing is you're locking in the frames and the structure from both the top and the bottom. And that shutter plank is, it's a bit challenging, but it's not terribly complicated. It just requires careful spiling, and spiling is the rather arcane method of patterning a plank, which is done with blocks of wood and battens and things, but it's arcs from a compass and then lines drawn tangent. And it's really, you do, when you fit the final shutter plank, of course, it's got to be a tight fit, but unless you do something really dumb, it's not terribly difficult.
I have to say, I've heard more new words in the last hour than I probably have.
Well, a lexicon is often helpful.
Yeah, it's very specific.
With these.
So I have a question for you. Why are boats referred to as she?
Well, not all of them are.
Okay. What determines it then?
Well, I think it's just sort of the owner's choice. They're often named for wives or children. But there's the when and if out there. There's the Alabama. There's Shenandoah. So they're not female names. In French, it's le bateau, although they have many female names on le bateau.
That's true.
So it's I think the she, and I hope this is still a politically correct comment today, is just due to the absolutely beautiful sensual nature of these things, and the shapes and the curves, and they're just they so far exceed anything that is masculine, I think.
That's a good answer. Okay. John says, I attended the launch party for the boat Schooner. It was a terrific event. So this presentation was especially interesting for me to see every step of the way of building Juno. Congratulations for your boatyard and the building of such beautiful boats.
Thank you very much.
And the last comment is from David that says, many thanks for an amazing presentation. The boats are just magnificent. And I agree with both those comments. So thank you so much, Nat, for joining us. That was really, really very interesting. We do record the presentation, so it'll be up on our website. If you want to, forward it to anyone, or if anyone wants to share it with friends or colleagues, it will be up on our website. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and long live your alliance. It's a great organization.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'll wrap up. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Our next, if you want to stay in touch with us, you can find us at saveoursound.org. Feel free to reach out to me directly. You can also follow us on social media, join our mailing list to learn about, events, upcoming webinars, and our efforts to protect and preserve Nantucket Sound. Our next webinar is going to be on boating safety, and that's August 3rd with Pat Cassidy, who owns New England Maritime and Cape Cod on the Fly. And then we're very excited to announce the fact that we're going to have an in-person conference, the first one, on September 21st at the Beach Club in Centerville. So you can register to attend that. And that will be a day of panel discussions with experts discussing, the history, shipwrecks, the environmental aspects of Nantucket Sound, and more. And it will end with a networking cocktail hour. So we encourage you to register for that. I think it'll be a great event. So thanks for joining us, and I will see you next month. All right. Bye, Nat.
Bye-bye. Thanks.